Hello and welcome to Rypple Leadership Series webinar, Do More Great Work. My name is Vicki and I will be in the background answering any WebEx technical questions. If you experience technical difficulties joining the WebEx session, please dial 1-866-229-3239. We do encourage everyone to use the audio broadcasting, but if you would like to join the teleconference via the phone, you will need to close the audio broadcasting box and request the phone by clicking on the phone icon below the participant list. It will then provide you with the dial-in number, along with the event number, and your personal attendee ID number. We will be holding a Q&A session at the conclusion of today's presentation. You may ask an online question at any time throughout the presentation today by simply clicking on the question mark icon located on the floating toolbar in the bottom right side of your screen. Please send questions to all panelists. Today's webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be made available to everyone through their email. With that, we invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy today's presentation. I would now like to introduce you to your first speaker for today, Nick Stein, Director of Content Media at Rypple. Nick, you now have the floor.
Thank you very much, Vicki, and welcome everyone to the latest webinar in Rypple's Leadership Series. We are privileged to be joined today by Michael Bungay Stanier, a provocative and innovative thinker and author who cares deeply about making the world of work and the world in general a better place. Michael recently completed an ambitious and worthwhile project, a book that collects the insights of 62 of the best management thinkers on the planet. It's called End Malaria because $20 of every book sold goes to buying mosquito nets to help end the scourge that takes thousands of lives every year. And they've already raised more than $300,000. But before I introduce Michael, I'd just like to say a few words about today's subject, how to do more great work. Michael will talk in detail about what this means to him. But for us at Rypple, it means making sure you're always focused on the right priorities and doing the work that will have the biggest impact, both for your own career and for the performance of your company. We just posted an amazing statistic on our blog In the Loop. It comes from management guru Gary Hamel, and it revealed that only 14% of employees actually feel engaged by their work, which is pretty stunning. There are several reasons for this, but one of the biggest is that people don't understand how the work they do connects to larger goals and aims of the organizations where they work. On Rypple's social performance management platform, goals aren't vague edicts that come from the top. They're flexible measures that change as business conditions change. They're bottom-up as well as top-down, so employees at all levels feel empowered. Everyone working on a goal is connected and has visibility in real time into what everyone else is working on. So they always know where they stand and how their daily work connects to larger goals of the organization. And when someone completes an action, everyone on the goal is notified in real time so they can adjust course or send a public message of recognition. Our guest today, Michael, has spent a big chunk of his career thinking about how we can maximize the time we spend doing the important stuff and minimize the clutter constantly threatening to invade our work lives. Michael is a true Renaissance man. He's a Rhodes Scholar, an author of the bestsellers Do More Great Work and End Malaria, and a senior partner at Box of Crayons, a firm that helps companies around the world focus on the work that really matters. He also speaks frequently at management and HR conferences, especially when they allow him to escape the cold Canadian winter. And we're very excited to have Michael with us today.
Nick, thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm just checking with Vicki or with you that I now get control of the slides, but it's fantastic to be here. And just as you said, Nick, it's wonderful to be working with Rypple because with Rypple, and the technologies you guys have, about helping focus on actually the stuff that matters. And that's exactly at the heart of what we're about at Box of Crayons, which is how do you do more of, we say do more great work and do less good work. Do more of the stuff that matters and less of all that other stuff that fills up your life. And Nick, you're quite right that the key thing that we're here to talk about today is about doing great work. And, with Steve Jobs passing earlier on, this is a quote that lots of people have probably already seen, but I wanted to share with it now around this importance of doing great work. And in particular, what I want to do with the time we have is to share with people some of the really cool insights and practical tactics that have come out of the End Malaria book. Now, I've got two agendas here. One agenda is to share some really practical, useful tools for people, and I'm absolutely going to do that. The second is I really want people to buy a copy of End Malaria, and I'm hoping this comes across differently from other authors who may have spoken, because the thing with End Malaria, it is a book full of goodness, full of great tactics and stuff, everybody from David Allen to Tom Peters to Sally Hogshead, all sorts of great thinkers. But $20 from every book goes to Malaria No More directly to buy mosquito nets and help them with their life-saving work in Africa. So that's 100% of the Kindle edition if you buy a Kindle. And it's $20 from $25 if you buy the hard copy edition. So a ton of money going. And as Nick said, $300,000 already raised in about a month and a half, which is awesome. Anyway, on with the webinar and on with some really practical stuff for you folks. But actually, before I get into some of the content, I've got one question I want to ask you. And you'll need a pen and a paper for this, so grab something you can write with. And the question is this. On a scale of 1 to 7, how focused are you planning on being during this webinar? 1, of course, is absolutely unfocused. 1 is you've got your BlackBerry on, you're doing your email as we speak, and you're hoping that this webinar will provide pleasant background noise while you get some real work done. 7, on the other hand, is like you've shut off all distractions, you've turned off your email, you've stopped things pinging, you've removed the paperwork, and you've done all you can to kind of actually give yourself the focused time that you've scheduled for yourself to actually get something useful and engaging and interesting out of this webinar. So I don't mind what number you give yourself. It's entirely up to you, of course, but I would love you to arrange yourself so that you're going to get exactly what you want from this webinar and stay as focused as you can, because we all know it's always challenging to stay totally focused in a webinar. So give yourself the best setup you can so you can squeeze the juice from this webinar and get what you want. Now, the setup, when I had this idea to do this book about a year and a half ago, I was like, I want to do something important. In my first book, Do More Great Work, I encourage people to do great work projects, something that you can really focus your energy on. And I was like, okay, so what's that going to be? And I had this idea of this book. And what I did is I approached people I knew and lots of people I didn't know, and I said, look, I just want you to write loosely around the topic of doing more great work. And I thought before I share some of the 3 key insights from the book, I'd just spend 2 minutes explaining what I mean by great work. And I actually got the initial idea from this from a guy called Milton Glaser. Now, many of you won't know who Milton Glaser is, but what you will know is his most famous design, because he's a graphic designer. And here is his most famous design. He actually designed the I Love New York logo. And what you see on your screens in front of you now is actually the napkin on which he did the first, this is the very first draft of what would become the I Love New York logo. And as I understand the story, he did this on the taxi on the way to the meeting where he was supposed to present his big idea. He was like, 10 minutes to go, I've got nothing. And he's sketching it on the back of a yellow cab on the way in to meet the state government of New York to do that. So Milton Glaser, and in a book of his called Art is Work, he says something very interesting. He says, everything you do falls into one of 3 different buckets. It's either bad work, good work, or great work. Bad work, good work, or great work. And I really love that definition. It's, I'm a believer of the saying, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And I think this is a wrong but useful model because intuitively you can immediately start figuring out just what you do and what falls into what bucket. But let me just unpack some of that for you. So what's bad work then? Well, what this isn't is a measure of quality, but what it is a measure of meaning and impact. So I want to give you a way of remembering what bad work is. Here we go, and this should explain everything. Now, the reason I'm showing you a wombat is in part because I'm although I live now in Canada, I was originally born in Australia, and it's one of my not so subtle agendas to get everybody to go and visit Australia because it's a great country and you haven't been there yet. Great wine, great beaches, all sorts of good reasons you should visit Australia. But the reason I'm showing you a wombat, one of the unusual creatures from Australia, is that a wombat stands for a waste of money, bandwidth, and time. And that's actually a pretty good definition of what bad work is. I mean, to put it even more bluntly, bad work is that mind-numbing, soul-sucking, life-crushing, stab yourself in the eye with a pencil to end the pain type of work. And I think you know what I'm talking about, right? And as we all work in organizations, it's those pointless meetings that go on forever. It's that paperwork that's a waste of time. It's, performance reviews that don't use the Rypple system. It's all that stuff where you go to yourself, this is my one and precious life, and somehow I have ended up doing this. What the hell just happened? So that's bad work. We've all got bad work in our lives. Hopefully we don't have too much of it. If you've got more than like 25% bad work, something's out of kilter. So bad work, you get what bad work is. Let me just unpack the second type of work, and it's good work. And the best description I can give you for good work is that it is your job description. In other words, it is important to have good work in your life because good work is productive and efficient and focused, and it's getting things done, and it's what your boss wants you to do and what your boss's boss wants you to do. So good work plays a really important role. But there are a couple of challenges with good work. One is that it keeps you stuck in a bit of a comfortable rut because you know that when you are doing good work, even though you're busy, even though you're a bit stressed, this is no longer you stretching and growing and really reaching your full potential. And all those people around you also stuck in good work, also not reaching their full potential, not having the impact that they might. And in fact, there's a cartoon that I found from Dilbert some years ago that really sums it up nicely. And you can see that there on your screen, which kind of gets to the heart of the matter. So this is the challenge with good work. Not only is it something that keeps you stuck in a comfortable rut, but there's just so much of it. It just keeps coming at you. It's a little bit like, if any of you know the myth of Sisyphus, the bad Greek king condemned to Hades, his punishment to roll a rock up a hill for the rest of his life, for the rest of eternity. And as he rolls the rock up the hill, as he gets close to the top of the hill, the rock slips out of his hands and rolls all the way down the mountain again, and he has to go back down and keep rolling it up the hill. And it never ends. And that's a little bit like good work. You know, there are times when you're doing good work, and you're like, okay, what I'm going to do, because I'm feeling just overwhelmed, is I'm going to get on top of everything. So you get in at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you start randomly deleting emails, and you kind of blow up your IM, and you shred paper, and you delegate, and you put in a 63-hour day, and you are exhausted at the end of that time. But you look at your desk, and you go, 0 inbox. Merlin Mann would be proud of me. 0 in tray. David Allen would be proud of me. Projects all done. I'm on top of everything. When I come in tomorrow, what I will do is I'll do some of my great work. And when you come in tomorrow, what's happened? It's all come flooding back, of course. You got emails to answer, you got meetings to go to, you got paperwork to process. It's just a never-ending cycle. So that's the paradox. Good work, critical to organization success, critical to your own sanity. You need to be doing good work, but so much of it that you get stuck there. It's got like a heavy gravity. It keeps pulling you in. And after good work, of course, there's great work. And I know you get a sense of what great work is, because great work is the work that has meaning, the work that matters, the work that you care about. It's kind of what you signed up for when you got this job. When you're down the pub and somebody says, hey, so what do you do? Sometimes your heart sinks, right, when they ask that question. And you kind of got to wind up your own PR agent to kind of make your job sound a little bit more exciting than it really is. But sometimes when you're working on something that really matters, you're basically chasing them around the room because you're like, let me tell you the cool stuff that I'm working on. That's great work. But the challenge with great work is it's a little bit like you're at a crossroads. On the one hand, absolutely, you have the excitement and the engagement and that flow state and all that important stuff that you know and you've experienced already when you've been doing great work. But at the other time, you also have fear and anxiety and uncertainty and kind of that sense of stepping out to the edge of your own competence and the edge of your own experience to actually get a sense of what really matters. So that's great work. So now you get the context for which these 62 great thought leaders actually shared their insights and their work with us. You got bad work, waste of time, bureaucracy, good work, your job description, getting stuff done, great work, doing the work that matters, doing the work that really has an impact. And when I asked these writers to share with us was their take on what it would mean to do more great work. So we talked to a bunch of people. One of the contributors was a cartoonist, a woman called Jessica Hagee. If you don't know Jessica, this is indexed. She does a great daily cartoon, just a kind of quirky on the back of an index card, always kind of makes you think and often makes you laugh. And you can see this is a nice little lead into the first points that we wanted to make. Great, pays both attention and pays great dividends. So a nice little quirky cartoon from Jessica. Here's the first learning point that I wanted to share, and it comes from two great thinkers. First is Roger Martin. Now, Roger Martin's written a number of books. He's just been named, I think, the number 5 or number 6 on the top 100 management thinkers. The book of his that I like most is called Design Thinking. It's kind of how you bring your left brain and your right brain in that metaphorical sense together to actually have more impact. And his essay in the book is called Thin Slicing, and it's the point of it is your work, just as the quote says, it's most productive and fun when you're doing the work that we are most qualified to do. And so the insight for him that he shares is, how do you ruthlessly, and he calls it thin slice, how do you ruthlessly thin slice your role so you constantly are giving away as much as possible so you get to focus on the work that truly matters. And that's supported by another great writer and a great thinker, a guy called Kevin Kelly. Some of you will know Kevin Kelly's name. He is the founding editor of Wired magazine, writes a brilliant blog. And for him, he tells a great story in the book about his realization that it is not your peak to be doing the work that you're really good at doing. That's good, but it's not great. What's great is when you are doing the work that nobody else can do. So it's like almost a more extreme version of what Roger Martin is saying, is that you've got to find the essence of the stuff that only you can do, and then you've got to find ways of holding on to that and giving the rest of it away. So here's what I want to do. I actually want to share a little exercise with you, a little process to help you figure out, amongst all the amongst all the oranges, what's the apple? What's the thing that you might focus on? So if you'll bear with me, I want to take you through a little process. It won't take you very long. But here's what you need. You do need a fresh sheet of paper for this. A blank sheet of paper would be great, and a pen, of course. I'm just going to give you a tool that helps you prioritize and focus on the work that is unique to you. So what I want you to do is I want you to draw a big square in the middle of the box. Sorry, big square in the middle of the paper. So big square, fill the paper as much as you can, and then I want you to put a cross that fills up that box. So effectively you have what a consultant like I would call a 2x2 box, a matrix. So you've got one big box and then 4 little squares in that. Fantastic. And you've got a horizontal axis and a vertical axis. So here's what we're going to do. Along the horizontal axis, I want you to write the words I care and put a plus under the right-hand column and put a minus under the left-hand column. And on the vertical axis, I want you to write they care. I want you to put a plus on the top level and a minus next to the lower level. So what you have now is a matrix to map out the tensions and the connections between I care and they care. And they, I want you to think about your boss or your boss's boss. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to do this quickly, but I basically want you to think about how you've spent the last 2 weeks working, wherever you are, and what specific tasks you've been working on. The more specific you can be about that, the better. And I quickly want you to jot down 10 things that you've filled up the last 80 hours or 90 hours or 100 hours of your working week, or working weeks, the last 2 weeks. And I want you to put them in the appropriate boxes using this simple little tool. So here's how it works. If you're going to put something in the top right-hand corner, it's stuff that you care about. In other words, probably your good work or your great work. It's stuff you think is important, you like to do, it matters to you. And stuff that your boss cares about, something that you think she might care about or he might care about. Second thing, place, bottom left-hand corner. Bottom left-hand corner is the stuff that you don't care about and they don't care about. So it's that stuff you look at on your task and you go, God, I really wish this wasn't part of my job. And then when you think about that specific task, you're like, and I don't know who even cares whether I do it or not. I don't think my boss does. So that's, you might put one or two things there. Sometimes people have nothing there. Sometimes they do. Top left-hand corner is the stuff they care about, your boss cares about, but you don't care about. In other words, it's the tasks that you go, this is my job. I have to do it because my boss wants me to do it, but holy cow, I really wish I didn't have to do it. It's a waste of my time. I wish there was some other way I could actually get that done. And then bottom right-hand corner, and this is kind of where it gets interesting. I want you to put down the stuff that you wish you were doing, the stuff that you think is important, the stuff that would make your job more meaningful, the projects that you'd love to get going on, but your boss or your boss's boss just doesn't get excited about it, just doesn't get lit up about it. I just want to give you a minute or two just to jot down 10 activities that you're currently responsible that fill up your last 2 weeks and put them in the appropriate place in this box. And Nick, maybe I can talk to you. Can we talk to each other live here? Nick,
yes, we can. Sorry, I just had you on mute for a moment.
That's all right. Well, let me just check with you while the people are doing this. Did those instructions make sense to you? Because
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting way of figuring out what your priorities are and what your organizational priorities are and how maybe they match up.
Well, because here's the thing: in any organizational work, there's stuff you want to do and there's stuff you need to do. And what you need to try and do to follow the advice of Roger Martin and Kevin Kelly is to find the best path through that tension, that paradox. You're trying to do stuff that matters to you, but you have to do stuff that matters to them. And what we tend to do, most of us, is we default to just doing the stuff that matters to them, and we kind of shortchange ourselves in the whole process. So part of what we're doing here with this exercise is helping people actually figure out what might go where. So what I'm going to do is just call you guys back. I know you've been working. Some of you will have done your 10 items. Some of you maybe not so much. But wherever you're at the moment, it's just perfect. And what you're seeing already, I think, having done that, you're going to notice a couple of things. One is it's forcing you to get clear about what do you actually care about. Because if you don't know what is your good work and what is your great work, nobody else is going to know. So you've got to get clear for yourself around what matters to me. And part of why this helps is it can actually tease that apart a little bit. And then the other thing you've got to be clear about was what does my boss actually care about? Because if I don't know what he cares about, how on earth am I going to deliver the stuff that matters to him? And for many of us, we are working under some assumption that we actually know what the boss cares about, and actually maybe not so much. One of the more powerful ways of managing upwards is actually to check in with your boss and go, here are, I think, your key 3 priorities for what we're trying to achieve over the next month or the next 90 days. Just want to make sure that you and I are on the same path for this because I don't want to waste my time doing the stuff that doesn't matter to you. Now, you filled this out. That's great. But what I want to give you is like, if you just leave it like this, it's a little bit, I use the acronym TBU. TBU stands for true but useless, because you don't know what to do with it unless you actually go to the next step. So here's how I would share the next step with you, which is like, having figured this out, it gives you the opportunity to make some choices about how you manage the tasks in the different boxes. So let's go to the top right-hand box. That's the box that you care about and they care about. The task for that, well, it's your sweet spot, right? The more you have in that top right-hand box, the happier you are in the role you're currently at. So the more that you can get into that top right-hand box, the better. So basically, if you've got stuff there, protect it, do it, love it, do it well, because that's a source of happiness, and strong alignment with you and your role in the organization. Stuff in the bottom left-hand corner. You don't care about it. They don't care about it. Just stop doing it. Typically, you're doing that because of routine or momentum or habit or confusion. And one of the great ways to test whether actually anybody cares about this or not is just to stop doing it. If you feel you have to do it, you need to do it in the fastest, quickest, kind of dirtiest way possible. It's like spend no time here. Let's look at the top left-hand box. That's the stuff that they think is important, your boss thinks is important, but your boss's boss, not so much. Okay? So this is a tricky one, right? Because this is the one that we get tangled up on because we're like, oh, I really wish I didn't have to do it, but hey, what can you do? My boss tells me I have to do it, so you grin and bear it and you get through it. But I've got a couple of ideas around this. Here's the first one. You want to spend as little time here as possible. So the most obvious thing to do here is figure out how you can delegate the stuff that's in this box in whole or in part. One of the things that comes from you being a nice person is that you often hold on to the stuff that's in this box longer than you need to because you're like, well, I don't really enjoy it, but I'll keep it because, I'm sure nobody else would enjoy it as well. Where, in fact, there may be other people in your team or other parts of the organization that would willingly take that off your hands. So see if you can delegate part of it. Secondly, see if you can speed it up, apply lean processes to it, cut out steps, do it faster, do it more efficiently. And the third tactic here that I'd share with you, it's the toughest one in many ways because it's a mind thing. It's about getting clear about the standard of delivery for what's in that box. And the standard of delivery here is one of being adequate, not excellent. And here's what I mean by that. Adequate means it's good enough. Excellent means it's above and beyond. You have limited capacity to be excellent. I want you to bring all of that to your great work, to the stuff in the final quadrant. The more time you spend moving from anything other than adequate in that box is time you waste on the work that really matters to you. Because remember, you don't care about this work. And that takes us to the final box, bottom right-hand corner. You care about it. It matters to you. But to your boss's boss, not so much. 3 quick strategies here. The first is get political, get smart, figure out ways of making your boss care about this. Second strategy is called the innovator's approach, also summed up by the phrase, it's easier to apologize than to explain. You just start it, and you go and show somebody a prototype rather than trying to sell them an idea. And the third piece here is just basically a recognition that, hey, maybe you're just not ever going to find this type of work in this role, in this organization. So maybe a different role, maybe even more radically a different organization. So I wanted to share that because I wanted to take the insight from Roger Martin and Kevin Kelly, 2 great thinkers, 2 great essays in the End Malaria book, which, remember, my main agenda here is to go and get you to buy a copy of this book and maybe buy copies for your friends and your colleagues and your clients as well. And actually take it from their insight, which is you've got to find the stuff that only you can do. You've got to thin slice yourself so that you're focused on where you have the real impact. And I wanted to share a practical tool to actually help you with that. Let me give you a second piece from the book. I'll start off by sharing another one of Jessica's really cool cartoons. And it speaks here to the resilience and the courage you need to do great work. And I've got a couple of really great writers here. Some of you may have seen one of these people on doing a TED Talk. I'm sure most of you are aware of what the TED Talks are. First quote is from Brené Brown. Her TED Talk on vulnerability is fantastic. TED.com, TED.com. Type in Brené Brown, you'll see it. It's 18 minutes and well worth a watch. And she talks about, in her essay in the book, the importance of vulnerability. And I love this phrase she's got about, it's about courage, it's about mindfulness and understanding, and it's a sense of being all in. There's a sense of being vulnerable as actually going, I can be fully committed. And I love that as an insight. Often we, to protect ourselves, we hold back from being all in terms of the work we do and the way we show up, the being and the doing of work. and we pay a price of being less happy and less fulfilled and less authentic and having less impact in the world as a result. The other quote from a completely different type of character than Brené is from Gary Vaynerchuk. He's written a couple of terrific books. I'm sure some of you have seen them. His Twitter handle is Gary V. And he's kind of famous for taking his dad's wine shop and making it a social media success and really being one of the first real megastars in Twitter. And you can see here that his insight is around the powerful marketing strategy ever is to care. And I think, again, that's another piece which is often in our work, and Nick spoke to this at the start of the call, we become disassociated. We lose connection with why we're doing it and who we're doing this for. Who do we serve as our customers? And we stop caring about it. We're just like, I'm trying to get the task done, not that I really care about the people I'm getting the task done for. In the sense of remembering and reconnecting with your customers, and also, and I think this is part of the brilliance of the Rypple technology, with the people around you, you get a different sense of connection and a different ability to care. So I've given you this picture, the poker chips, in part inspired by Brené's quote about being all in. And again, I want to share a little exercise with you that may be useful, and just in terms of a sense of what it might be to be all in. So here's how this works. This is a bit more of a mind exercise, although it'd be worth having pen and paper handy to write down some pieces from this. So what I want you to imagine is, I want you to come up with, is actually a specific challenge that you're currently facing at work. You're not going to have to share this with anybody, so it's just, think about all the stuff that's on your plate, the projects you're working on, and think about a particular challenge that you've got to come up with and you need some solutions to, some answers to. And what I want you to do is I want you to write down, imagine there's a scale of courage that goes 1 to 10 in terms of how bold and how brave and how all in you can be in terms of what the solution might be. And what I want you to do is just quickly jot down what's the answer, what's the solution for your challenge that's it's a 4 out of 10. In other words, it's pretty damn safe. You're like, it's okay, it's not that inspiring, it's not that challenging, but it's perfectly all right in terms of the answer to this solution. What would a 4 out of 10 solution look like to the challenge that you have in mind? 4 out of 10 on a ranking of courage. How courageous are you? Now let me make it even easier for you. What does a 1 out of 10 look like? I mean, what is pretty much the least courageous thing you could do to nudge this forward a little bit? Maybe send an email, show up to the meeting, don't show up to the meeting, I don't know. But what's the simplest, least courageous solution to whatever the challenge is that you set yourself, that you have in mind? Now let's swing the pendulum the other way. Imagine you're now at 8 out of 10, right? So this is sort of sweaty palm stuff, right? You're kind of like, you think about what this solution is, an 8 out of 10 on the courage scale. You think about that, you actually are thinking to yourself, wow, I'm a little anxious. I probably wouldn't do that. I'm a little nervous about doing that. That may be a career-limiting move. But just bring to your mind or jot this down, what would an 8 out of 10 look like in terms of a courageous act in response to the challenge you set yourself? And finally, let me go a little spinal tap on you and take you to 11. What would 11 out of 10 look like? This is I have no fear. I care not about the consequences of this. This is me just swinging for the fences, going all out. No fear, no pain. I'm just going crazy about it. What would 11 out of 10 look like? And having pushed you there, my question to you now is, so what? So what's the action that you will take? And if you wrote these down, I'd love you to put an asterisk next to the action that you will actually take to move forward on this particular challenge. If you just thought about it, bring it to mind. And for me, the value of this little exercise is that it helps you be more courageous. It helps you go more in. It helps you care more. It helps you be more vulnerable. But it helps you be bolder. It helps you have more impact. Because my hypothesis is that we default, in terms of the solutions that we jump to, we default to a 3 or a 4 out of 10. But once you've seen what an 8 out of 10 or an 11 out of 10 looks like, it's pretty hard to go back to the 3 or 4 out of 10. You know, it's going to be somewhere in between 4 and 10 in terms of where you opt out. So as an exercise in terms of courage, one of the places to look at is rather than rush to action and rush to solutions, which is what many of us do in our working lives, it's to slow down just a little bit, explore what possibilities there are, and see if you can expand those possibilities. And this simple little exercise around courage is one way of expanding the possibilities in front of you. So I have a third and a final insight that I want to share from the book, a book that I know many of you are now weighing up and going, maybe I should go and buy that because it's only $20 Kindle version and $25 hard copy, and all that money goes to Malaria No More, and it saves lives, and it's a brilliant gift for the holidays. And I want to take you to a third, I hope that wasn't too subtle for you. I want to take you to a third insight around this. I'll start off with a little piece around Jessica Hagee, again, a little piece around courage, I think, at the point of her cartoon. And for this, the quotes are from Jonah Lehrer. Jonah Lehrer, a fantastic writer, mainly on science, but he writes in Wired magazine and a number of different other magazines, often about how science shows up in our lives. And this is very interesting. When we're faced with a difficult problem, the most obvious solution, the first idea we're focused on, is probably wrong. And think about how many times when you're faced with a challenge in your work, as soon as somebody gets an idea that is okay, doesn't suck too badly, that you can probably do, you're like, hooray, we'll go down that route. And often the first idea is never the best idea. And in fact, this is backed up by a guy called Stephen Johnson, and another Twitter maniac, and he's written a couple of great books. I think one of them is called Everything Bad for You is Good for You, or something like that. And really terrific writer about innovation, terrific blog as well. And for him, the essay he wrote it for the End Malaria book is around, if we focus too hard, what we miss is the stuff that creeps in and sort of the margins of our attention, on the sort of places on the peripheral vision. And of course, it's no accident that the fact that you don't really have your best ideas when you're sitting at your table, at your work table, at your office, in front of your computer. You have them when you're up, when you're moving around, when you're in the shower, when you're playing basketball, when you're moving in a different way. And really, that's the tactics and the tips that I would love to share with you as a way from that, which is around the insight of your body leads your brain. We often think it's the other way around. We think our brain leads our body. We have a thought, our body responds to it. But in fact, if you want to think differently, you need to move your body in a different way. Because every time you go to your standard chair, in your standard office, in front of the standard computer, and you sit down, what your body says is, I recognize this. This is doing good work. This is plowing through emails, doing Excel, coding, doing spreadsheets. It's doing the same old stuff. And your brain gets set up to go, yes, this is all about good work. It's not about doing great work. So if you want to do great work, and I know you do, one of the ways to do that is changing spaces and changing paces. What I mean by that is, in terms of changing spaces, find a different place to work. It can be a different meeting room. It can be a coffee shop. It can be somewhere out of the office. It can even be just a different part of your regular desk. But you've got to get out of the same old space to change the way you think, to think more in the great work scheme of things. And the piece around pace is around getting physical. Movement helps free up ideas, helps free up great work. And for most of us, we spend our whole livelong working day on our butts doing the same old stuff, and we're literally coding our brain to only be able to do good work. And of course, I'm hungry for second only to you buying a copy of the book. I'm hungry for you to actually be doing great work and doing the stuff that matters. Now, I know we're about to open this up for a Q&A with Nick, but before we do that, one of the things I'd love you to write down is, of the little things that I shared with you today, the exercises that you did with me, the insights from the 6 writers, 6 of the 62 from the book, what are you taking away? What's 1 or 2 things that you're taking away? What's the gold dust for you in this? What are the ahas? And it's worth writing this down, because it actually means that you're likely to remember it if you write it down, whereas if you just skip through it, it'll be one of those hours of your life where you go, I did a webinar, it was quite interesting, can't really remember much about it. So what's the 1 or the 2 things that you're taking away from this that make this a valuable use of your time? What I'm going to do now is I'm going to just remind you of the website for the book and then stop going on about it and actually look to Nick and go, Nick, my work here is done, or at least my formal presentation piece is done. What do we have questions from people? How do you want to run the Q&A piece?
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, thank you very much for that, Michael. I think that we all often get so wrapped up in our working lives and in our routine that, just some of the exercises that you've taken us through force us to step outside of that box and think for a moment about, are we really working on the right things? I guess, one question that I would ask you is, you spoke about changing your location where you do your work, moving around, trying to get yourself out of that physical space. But how do you get yourself in touch with what really matters? I mean, I think some of us get so wrapped up in the work that we're doing every day, we actually stop thinking about whether it's even the right work or the best work. And I know, with Rypple, we encourage our customers to run what we call loops, regular feedback loops or questions, where we literally ask them, what are the 3 things Michael did this quarter that had the most impact, and what are the 3 things that he could focus on next quarter that would have the most impact? So this idea of getting you to think about those really important objectives and what accomplishing those objectives would look like. But I wondered if you had thoughts, either yourself or from some of the authors that you collected in the book, about how to actually do that thinking part of it as well.
Well, truthfully, the starting point for this is to recognize that you need to do some thinking about it. One of the 10 years or so ago, there was an article in the Harvard Business Review, and it's called "Beware the Busy Manager." And it said that 90% of managers waste their time with busy work, and just 10% have the right mix of what they had called energy and focus to actually sustain the ability to focus on the stuff that matters. And they looked at what are the things that 10% did that really made the difference. And there were a few really interesting things. One is they limited their communications. Pretty important in this world of endless email, IM, interruptions, all the stuff that keeps interrupting our ability to work. Secondly, they surrounded themselves with people who could help them. Thirdly, they got the sleep and the exercise they needed. And if any of you have come across Tony Schwartz's work, he's one of the authors in the book, he's a great proponent for the greatest way for you to make a real difference in the work you do is get an extra hour's sleep a night, because it will change your performance out of this world. But one of the other things about this, Nick, was around protecting thinking time. And so much of us, we basically start our day, and this will be familiar to a bunch of people on the line, we start our day by, we wake up and we flip open the laptop and we start processing emails. And here's what happens. All of that energy in your prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of your brain, the glucose and all the stuff that is creative and plans and makes decisions, gets used up doing email. Now, here's the thing. Everybody knows the story of that legendary CEO who goes, I started in the mailroom and I worked my way up and now I'm the CEO of this great company. Well, somehow we have all worked our way back down into the mailroom, and we use our precious thinking time. It's a limited resource to do email. One of the most powerful things you can do is spend 10 to 15 minutes at the start of a day going, what are the important things for me to focus on? The tool I use, I go, look, I'm thinking about my great work. If there was one thing that would move my great work forward today, what would that one thing be? And then if there were two others that would have been a gravy if I can do them, what are those two other things? I call it the 1+2 method. And I go, look, I'm thoroughly committed to doing at least one, and if I get the other two done, that's just fantastic as well. So holding the time, Nick, and spending time to figure out what matters to you. Now, to do that, you actually have to spend a bit of time going, what does matter to me? Who am I in this world? What do I care about? How do I want to show up? What's the impact I want to have in this world? And part of that is around actually figuring out who are you and what do you stand for. One of the essays in the End Malaria book is by a guy called Derek Sivers. He launched CD Baby, published a book through Seth Godin's printing press, another great writer. And his little essay, it's short but very sweet. It's called In a Perfect Day. And it actually helps you articulate what a perfect day looks like. And in doing that, it helps you articulate what really matters to you. And I think the third piece is exactly what you spoke to Nick, which is around the value of actual useful feedback about what's working well and what's not working so well, so that you can adjust with that. But that external feedback is actually less useful unless you've got a kind of personal foundation about this is what I care about, this is what matters to me. That's what allows you to interpret the feedback and make the most of it.
Right. That's very helpful. I mean, I would say that once you've kind of determined what the work is that you feel to be great, I would imagine that when you're working in an environment with a manager, it might be helpful to establish a kind of relationship with them where, you can communicate your desires about what you want to work on. And I know you do a lot of coaching, and was sort of interested to get your feedback on how you bring others around you into the conversation so that they become aware of what's important to you and what work you really want to do, and ultimately, if you're lucky, become supportive of it and respectful of the time you want to spend doing it.
Yeah, well, sometimes, let's just be clear about it, sometimes you're up against a terrible boss and an awful organization, and you're just like, this is a conversation that's never going to fly. And if you're in that situation, knowing that it's tough economic times, I'd still go, can you find an alternative? Because that's a huge waste of a huge part of your life to be stuck somewhere where your spirit is effectively crushed like that. But let's assume that for most people, they've actually got a boss that's okay and their organization is okay. And then for me, the conversation is having the courage to actually talk about this stuff rather than just not talk about it or wait till, the annual performance review, which is, our whole exercise of pointlessness for the most part, my humble opinion. So, the very first exercise we did, what I call the I care, they care matrix. Imagine doing that for your work and then sharing it with your team and going, team, what do you think about this? Or taking this work and sharing it with your boss and going, here's how I see things. What do you see? And what you're looking for is a conversation. Because fundamental to the work that I do, Nick, and I know some of the other speakers on this webinar series are about, what I'm about is helping people have adult conversations and relationships in their workplace. And here's one definition of an adult-to-adult conversation. Ask for what you want, knowing that the answer may be no. And what I see a lot in organizations is people doing a really poor job at asking for what they want and a really poor job at saying no if the answer is no.
Well, I think that's a great way of putting it, because I think that, what we've noticed with our customers is that these types of adult conversations take time to develop, and that by encouraging an environment where feedback and sharing of information between a manager and an employee becomes a regular, continuous part of the flow of conversation, it allows you to build that foundation where you can then become more courageous, because you're less worried about the fact that maybe it's a once-a-year opportunity to talk with your manager, because you know that you have that ongoing dialogue with them all the time. One question that just came in that's interesting is a discussion I was in recently posed that most people are working 2 levels below the job they were hired to do. Do you have any thoughts or reaction to that idea?
It's a disturbing statistic, isn't it, around that? So the obvious facetious response to that is, employing a band of ninjas to actually start trimming the upper level so job opportunities open up for you. But ninjas are hard to come by these days. So what's a more serious answer to that? Where I go with it, and I'm not sure how useful this is, but there's a choice you always have in terms of how you can respond to the situation you're giving, and the fundamental choice is: am I a victim here, or am I not a victim here? And one of the questions I would ask if I was coaching you around this is so that may be the situation. Currently, how does your behavior reflect you playing a victim in the face of the situation, which is something that you can't control? And I'd be curious to explore that and poke at that. And I then go, and so how does your behavior, and what is other behavior that is not victim-like in response to a situation like that? And to me, I suspect there's something about what's the entrepreneurial response, by which I mean you go, okay, I've got to make this work. How do I make this work? How do I get stuff started? How do I get things moving, knowing that I have limitations? And I know that's an abstract and probably not a very useful answer to people, but to me, the fundamental piece is around, if that's true, then that's true, that there are people are working 2 levels below their capability. So how do you hack the system, and how do you not be resigned to your fate and not be a victim to find ways to try and find ways around that?
Right. One of the interesting things always for me when you talk about good work versus great work is just this idea that that people can sometimes take for granted, especially if they're new coming into an organization, that the job as it was being done before, or the role as it was defined, is just set in stone, and they just need to continue with what was happening. Are there strategies that you have to to kind of give people both the courage but also just the inspiration to say, just because this is the way that it was done up until now doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's the best way, doesn't mean it's necessary. It could very easily fall into that, bottom left-hand quadrant of your matrix, and sort of just forget about it and think about, is there a better way to do this?
Well, I do think that one of the ways forward here is that insight around it's easier to apologize than to explain. And for me, one of the things that I've seen with people I've coached and worked with is that sometimes what you need to do is you need to do stuff undercover. So rather than waiting for permission, take permission and start doing things differently. Sometimes, though, what you need to do is you need to go, I need to be political and find sponsors or ways of working around the roadblock that I have ahead of me. And of course, it's different for every situation. But I do think that piece around, okay, I'm going subterfuge on this. I'm going undercover. I'm not going to make a big splash about it because the louder you are, the more that provokes resistance in the system. But if you go undercover, it's like, how do I make stuff happen behind the scenes? And, a guy called Bill Jensen, who's another one of the authors of the book, known as Mr. Simplicity, he put a book out recently called, I think it's called Hacking Work. And it's a great book. I actually like an earlier one of his even more. It's called the Simplicity Survival Handbook. And effectively, it's like, here's ways of hacking work, because work is broken. So you've got to be a benevolent hacker here and figure out, how do I take responsibility for shifting things in my world? The other thing, Nick, just as probably as a final comment, is understanding that often a team is the most powerful unit of change within an organization. It's difficult to do stuff as an individual because you've got the weight of the organization against you. It's very tough to wait for the whole organization to change because that's typically a slow and patchy process. But if you can get a team that's agile and focused and nimble and actually clear on what matters and the impact they're trying to have, they can actually create a very interesting subculture and have some real impact in the work that they do.
Well, I think that's a great insight and a very fitting way to end this session. So I would like to thank you again, Michael, for joining us today, and thank everybody who came to the webinar today. And I hope you found it as inspiring and as useful as I did. And I know I'm going to start thinking more clearly about whether the work that I'm doing all the time is the work that I should be doing. So thank you again, and we'll look forward to seeing you again.
Everybody who showed up, I really appreciate you holding the hour on your busy days to do that as well. So thank you for everybody.
And you can see the slide of our next upcoming leadership webinars. And so we hope that you will join us for those. The next one, Coaching with Compassion, is in a couple of weeks' time. Thank you again, everyone.